so that that war did what the Pankhursts and the protests of the late 19th, early 20th century couldn't do. So women's issues, social issues, economic issues, all of those things became radically different after the war. And I thought, looking at such a character as Sherlock Holmes, that to simply assume that he would have no place because it was a different England was undervaluing the strength of him as a person. I thought that he would find an identity and a place in that society. So I've had the great pleasure and an interesting time in exploring how this extraordinary man would have developed as a person in those years after the war. So that's just one of the things that I'm doing with the books. Also, I just happen to be having a great time with them. So. Any comments, questions? I can rattle on in any direction for hours, clearly, but yeah, in the pink.
What made you make your heroine so young to start with?
Why did I make Russell so young to start with? Yeah, I often wonder why people would buy a book when it's about a 15-year-old girl who meets a 50-something-year-old man and eventually marries him. I mean, it really does sound kind of creepy. I wanted to write, The Beekeeper's Apprentice was intended to be a coming-of-age story. And I wanted to write about a young woman who is alone and is discovering who she is. So that really 15 is about the ideal age. The time was chosen for me because of that last Conan Doyle story set in 1914, that I really couldn't use Holmes before that because it would conflict with what everyone knows about Holmes from Conan Doyle. And I didn't want to write a pastiche saying, he had this friend he sort of kept on the side for 10 years that nobody knew about. Much cleaner to say 1914, Conan Doyle was in charge. 1915, he's all mine. So I was kind of backed into the corner with that. If I wanted a young woman, and I really had no choice about his age, I wasn't sure at first that I could do anything with them other than make them friends. I mean, a partner and his young apprentice. But you have to remember that one of the things that happened in Britain in the teens and 20s is that there weren't any young men. I mean, millions of young men either died or were so badly injured, psychologically or physically, or their lungs were damaged by the gas, that they had millions of what were called in the press surplus women. Which, I don't know about you ladies, but I don't think I care to be called a surplus woman myself. But the normal and expected ways of forming pairings just went out the door. So that it was very common in the 20s to find a younger woman married to a man who normally would have been considered too old for her. It's somewhat complicated by the fact that my own husband was 30 years older than I am. And I was once doing an event down in LA for one of the books, and it was one of these huge book fairs, and I had a new book out, so my publisher asked me to come, and they brought cartons of the books, and they were free, so all you had to do was stand in line and I'd sign a book for you. I was sitting down, so I couldn't tell how many people were in the line. All I could tell was that there were more than two. But I thought that there were a fair number, because my publisher, who is a sort of, you could imagine Bette Midler, I mean, that kind of New Yorker, was slapping the books down in front of me really fast. As soon as I give one away, there'd be another. So I figured there was a line, and so I was doing the thing of, thank you very much, hope you enjoy it, thank you very much, hope you enjoy it, thank you very much, I enjoyed it. And at a certain point, this man with a big book bag stops directly in front of me, and he says, "I wanted to ask you about this age difference." And I'm feeling Nita going, because you only have this spot for X number of hours. So I said to him, "Well, my husband's 30 years older than I am, so I know really well what a 60-year-old man is capable of." He turned bright red, snatched the book and ran. Nita, meanwhile, is pissing herself. And I was saying, "What? I'm talking about things like taking out the garbage and chasing the children." Dirty-minded people. So Monday morning, all of Random House knows that Laurie King's making dirty jokes to her fans. So I'm careful how I answer questions about age now. So yeah.
Your point about the shifting of areas during the war. Marvel is seen where Russell returns from watching a soldier in the hospital die, and has a big argument with Holmes on what they're doing. Can you say more about that scene?
The question is about the shifting of roles? Is that what you were?
Shifting of the whole world.
The shifting of social expectations in the whole world. There's a scene in Beekeeper where Russell has been volunteering time at a hospital nearby, and a young man has just died. And she comes home and is in a fury of agony over the ineffectualness of what they are doing, because basically Holmes is training her. And he points out to her that if the war goes badly, people with skills such as his and those that she is learning might come in very useful. It's always something, looking back on a war, that we tend to forget. But a war can go either way. And at the time in Britain, when the war first started, the Great War first started, everyone assumed that it would be trouncing the Germans and they'd be home by Christmas. 4 Christmases later, they were still in the trenches, still dying of trench foot and bombs and everything else. And the business of what you can do if the Hun, as they called him, came over the channel was very real. So yes, that's the kind of thing that it's one of the things that when you're writing historical fiction, on the one hand, it seems kind of odd because we all know how it turned out. And we know that a prime minister didn't get blown up, or that we didn't lose the war, or whatever. On the other hand, historical fiction enables me as a writer to use familiar scenes and images from the past to illuminate the present.